So here's what I want you to notice. I told you to mark it. In Genesis chapter 5, verse 24, and Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Now, when you read that, it doesn't give you the full picture, irrespective of the translation you might use, except one that's trying to add something to it, because it doesn't give you everything there. You have to go to the book of Hebrews to get the full story. So you go to Hebrews chapter 11 and verse number 5. By faith Enoch was translated. So now we know when it says he was not, for God took him, we now understand what he meant. By faith Enoch was translated. He was transferred. He was taken away that he should not see death. So Enoch did not die. That's wonderful. By faith Enoch was translated that he should not see death and was not found. Oh, so we see what we read in Genesis, he was not. So you complete it, he was not found. He did not see death, he was not found. Because God had translated him. For before his translation, he had this testimony that he pleased God. So the days that were before the flood were days of corruption and wickedness. In fact, God said so to Noah, and he said, the wickedness of men have come before me. He said, I'm going to destroy man that I've made, man that I've created. I'm going to destroy man from the face of the earth. He said, there's too much wickedness in the world, too much wickedness and corruption. In the midst of that, he gets Noah to build an ark, and he delivers Noah and his family, because the Bible says Noah walked with God. So there are two people in that whole story in Genesis, with all the people that were mentioned. You get only Enoch and Noah that walked with God. The Bible says Enoch walked with God. Then also it tells us that Noah walked with God. So in the midst of a corrupt society, there were those that walked with God. Enoch did, and he was translated. Noah did, and he was warned by God to build an ark to the saving of his soul, of his life and his family. And of course, anyone else who would have believed could have been saved, but they believed not. All right. So you can understand that in spite of the wickedness of the day, there were those that God saved. They were translated, they were death. Enoch and Elijah, two men that were translated that they should not see death. So I'm going to take you to Elijah's case now. In 2 Kings chapter 2, you'd read from verse 1, the story of Elijah. And it came to pass when the Lord would take up Elijah into heaven by a whirlwind, that Elijah went with Elisha from Gilgal. That's wonderful. It says, it came to the time when God would take Elijah into heaven by a whirlwind. So it was God's plan. And what kind of day, what day did Elijah live in? I want you to know that by this time, Ahab had only died a few years previously. And Ahab was one of the worst kings of Israel. He was a terrible man. Inspired by his evil genius, Jezebel. And then his son was also a bad king, very wicked. Copied his father and his mother. And there was so much wickedness in the land in the days of Elijah. This was the day in which he lived. These were God's people who turned to be worshiping idols. But God had a plan. Now, let's read what happened to Elijah It came to pass when the Lord would take up Elijah into heaven by whirlwind, that Elijah went with Elisha from Gilgal. And Elijah said unto Elisha, tarry here, I pray thee, for the Lord had sent me to Bethel.